Very good morning to you, grade 12. We are meeting again on our lesson today. We are continuing with our genetics and inheritance lesson. I always remind you, our lessons are brought to us courtesy of VT Africa Holdings. They bring to us smart kept lessons in conjunction with their subsidiaries, which is Fibotech and Fastratech. Much appreciation to their good efforts. Today we'll be doing our assessment together as we solve problems involving sex linkage. So we'll be meeting, we'll be interacting on the smart board as part of our assessment. Today we should cover sex linkage, one example of traits that can be passed on from parents to offspring, and they are carried on the gonosomes, our sex chromosomes. Thank you very much. Let's go on and continue with the lesson of today. Yesterday, we concluded our lesson on how sex is determined. Briefly, we said in human beings and in some animals, sex is determined by genes carried on the X and Y chromosomes. Only female do carry 2 copies of the X chromosomes. Half of male share. The other half carries X, the other half carries Y. I did a diagram with you indicating how the X and Y chromosomes can be passed on from the parent to the offspring. I indicated that these only show the probable chances of fertilization between mother X and female Y to get a boy. Is 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4. Of the 4 getting a boy, chances is 2. So is getting a girl, giving us a 50% chance of getting a boy or a female once fertilization takes place. Thank you. Good morning once again, grade 12. I greet you from all over in our beautiful country. Welcome to our lessons that are kindly brought to us by VT Africa Holdings. They bring to us KIPS aligned lessons in conjunction with their subsidiary companies, Fibotech and VT Africa. Today, I'm not inviting you for our logon because we are doing the activities together. Prepare a bigger assignment, which is an assessment form that is coming on Wednesday. So thanks to them for bringing to us very beautiful lessons. Let's move on to our lesson for today. I always want to emphasize the objective of each lesson, and I emphasize this at the beginning of the lesson on sex linkages. So the objective of this lesson is for you to be able to determine how sex, to establish how sex is determined, as well as to follow how several diseases, only a few examples, are sex-linked. Why? Because we said yesterday the traits, the genes that are carried on the X chromosomes are said to be sex-linked. So we are to meet these objectives after covering our lesson. So as a recap of what we did yesterday, we looked at how sex is determined. We discussed and we understood, hopefully, that the X chromosomes are responsible for determining so as the Y chromosome. If an individual carries two X chromosomes, she becomes, if it's an X and the Y, become a male. Okay. We ended our lesson on this very good, according to me, slide. Once again, we said genes carried on the X chromosomes are said to be sex-linked. We discussed this yesterday. And then I went into say, in the case of heterogametic sex, there is a portion of the X chromosome which there is no homologous region on the Y chromosome. And I don't forget when I give you some homework, I always remember it. I do not forget. What did I say was a homework yesterday, grade 12? I said a simple homework. Go and ponder and try to understand what do we mean when we say there is a portion of the X chromosome of which there is no homologous region or portion. Maybe let's be consistent. There is no homologous region or there's no homologous portion on the Y chromosome. Just for consistency, portion, region, or portion. Good. There is no homologous portion on the Y chromosome. Wonderful. What does this statement say? This statement I seem to like so much. What does it say? Your karyotypes. Did you do the karyotype? You should have done karyotype when you were doing your meiosis. All right. We always say homologous. And I said yesterday, homologous, which means in shape, in size. Physically, we see. But when we come to our X and Y chromosomes, by their nature, the X chromosome is far much bigger than the Y chromosome. The X chromosome, sorry, I want to sketch the X chromosome like I did yesterday. Let's say this is my X chromosome. I'm very good at art. Yes. Is generally bigger than the Y chromosome. So you find that the Y will be smaller. Hence, this X chromosome that I have done in yellow is bigger than the Y. So there's no homologousness here because Y does not extend. Y does not extend up to here to form a homologous chromosome with X. So X has got a portion which in simple English does not oppose here, if I should say so. I hope you get what I'm saying. Whatever X is carrying on this region upwards, it does not have either a recessive or a dominant side from the Y. That's what we mean. There is a portion on the X chromosome for which there is no homologous region or portion on the Y. So there is no counter portion on the Y side of X. In other words, if I may say it, X has got the leeway to express whatever he or she is carrying on this non-homologous region. Why? Because there is no a homologous position. If it's on this region, which is green, X might not have the leeway that she expresses on the other side, because here they could be dominant or recessive on the other side of Y. So depending on who is dominant or recessive on the other will be expressed. So at least there's some counter on the homologous region. But when it's the non-homologous region, X may freely express him or herself. That's what we mean, and we should understand this. I hope you have. All right, let's move on. So as I've just said, this is the non-homologous portion of the X chromosome. And this is the homologous portion of the X chromosome, because there's a Y. Are we happy there? Great. 12. Hopefully so. Let's move on. Characteristics that are determined by genes that are carried on the non-homologous portion of the X chromosome, therefore appear in males. I'm sure you can make sense. They appear in males even if they are recessive. Consolidating what I've just said. Why they appear in males? Because as long as it's an XY, it's a male. They appear in males despite them being dominant. Why? Because of lack of counter on this non-homologous portion. So they will be expressed. Whatever is carried here will be expressed in the XY chromosome, which is a male. So this is an example of a male because it's an XY chromosome. That's why my statement meant. I hope you are following. This special form of linkage explains the inheritance of sex-linked traits such as red-green color blindness, hemophilia, and premature balding. Premature balding, something will be happening here at an early age. You find that also for me. So our examples that we'll be looking at, or questions that you find even from your past exam papers, will only focus on these two examples, mostly these two examples. All right. Let's look at hemophilia just briefly. Hemophilia is also called a breeder's disease. Breeder, which means bleeding. It's a sex-linked recessive condition. Sex-linked recessive condition which prevents the factor VIII formation. It prevents the formation of factor VIII within our bodies. Factor VIII is an important factor that plays a role in the rate of blood clotting within our bodies. The gene responsible for the production of factor VIII is carried on the non-homologous portion of the X chromosome. So this one is known. It's known that somewhere, I'm just guessing, grade 12, somewhere, let me take this region, okay? My smart body is a bit slow. Somewhere on end of this non-homologous portion, that's where we have the gene that carries the trait for factor VIII production. Let's say it occupies this region. All right. So if this gene for this particular boy or man is recessive, it's automatically expressed in the male. If it's the dominant one, the one that facilitates the production, it's also expressed in men. So depending on whether you have inherited the recessive one, then you will be hemophilic if you're man. If you have inherited the dominant one, of course your blood can clot. So it's carried on this region, hemophilia. Okay. Okay, let's move on. It can appear in two forms. I've mentioned it. It can be dominant or recessive. The recessive one is the mutant form. Below are possible genotypes and phenotypes that can occur in the inheritance of hemophilic traits. Okay. All right. All right. Okay, let's look at the example. And I also want to note how we represent, how the notation of sex linkage is slightly different from simple Mendelian inheritance. Are we together? Yesterday, we just did show how sex is determined in simple terms, the X and Y. So when you are now looking at a specific gene carried on either of these, we support it by, we show it by showing that trait as a subscript of either the X or the Y, because it's carried on the X or Y. So the hemophilia is carried on the X chromosome in a dominant nature or in a recessive nature. So they are only carried on the X chromosome. This hemophilia is carried on the X. You see some texts, they say X-linked inheritance because they are being specific. Because on Y, there's nothing. Specifically for hemophilia, are we together? Good. So take note, slight change in our usual X or Y or our usual toe or graph as an example. We just did them as letters, no superscripts on them. Superscripts comes only when that particular trait we are looking at is sex linked. I'm emphasizing this because my learners sometimes get confused in an exam. They don't know. The moment they say we give an example of an outcome after a process of fertilization, you find learners are throwing on sex linked type question. So I deliberately come to sex link before before we looked at dihybrid inheritance, because I would want you to clear the confusion. You see, after this sex link, we're going back to dihybrid inheritance. And then, so that you do on mono and di, and then you see the differences in questions that relate to sex linkage, where we have to represent the specific gene that you are talking about or trait and its variation as the subscript of the acronym, because it's sex linked, carried on sex chromosomes. Grade 12, I'm sure you are happy. I've told you, you should be very happy. Okay, let's move on to see how exactly this is done. So we've said we're now talking about hemophilia as one of the examples of a linked recessive condition. Below are the possible genotypes and phenotypes that can occur in the condition, in the event of the inheritance of hemophilia. Okay, let's look at how it looked like. All right. Okay, let's look at in the way of an example. The example here says, if a carrier hemophilic female marries a normal male. See, I like the terminology that genetics plays around it. And I like it because I always emphasize it to my learners that that's what are the terms you should look for. Leading terms. Carrier, we'll explain it. What does a carrier mean? And where do we find carrier in which sex for a particular problem? A carrier may only be found in males or in female, but most of the times only in females. If it's carried on the X chromosome, because X chromosome, there are 2 in female. So there can be a chance that it comes as a carrier or as a recessive trait. Okay, if a carrier hemophilic female marries a normal male, what would be the possible phenotypes? A carrier hemophilic female marries a normal. Please take note of this term, normal. What would be the possible phenotypes of their children? That's the question I'm posing to you. And I've said the solution, let H represent normal allele for bright clothing, which is dominant, and let H represent the recessive one. XX is female, XY is a male. Very, very good. Next point. How do we denote our phenotype? Parental phenotype is a carrier female married to a normal male. I've put that. I got my mark. Or maybe there are even 2. The genotype. And I'll pause here for now. How do we present the genotype? Carrier female. First of all, if it's female, it's X. Apologies. If it's a female, it's what? X and X. Hence, you see X and the caps H, which represents who? The normal blood clot, which is dominant over hemophilic. So, because she's carrying both dominant and the recessive, and we know we've been told normal clot is dominant over recessive. So the moment you have 2 heterozygotes, which means you exhibit the dominant trait. So this is a normal female. But because the other one is carrying a recessive one, she becomes a carrier female. But she does not suffer from hemophilia. Why? Because of the dominant she's carrying. Okay. Normal male, you see, only one H. And why? We'll come back to the full drawing. We come back to the full drawing. Let's just exhaust the possible phenotypes and genotypes that are found in a hemophilic disorder. Okay. Just look at this possible genotype so that we'll be familiar. As I have said, we use our X chromosomes. So the X and H all encaps with a normal. Please check the terminology. Normal female. Because your questions can be structured in this form. A normal female, married, blah, blah, blah. A carrier female, or they don't tell you. They just give you diagram, like I said yesterday, of a female and a male. And from the key, they look normal. But from their offspring, you find a recessive one, which means already told you that the female was a carrier. Making sense? It should. So take note of the terminology carrier female. Why carrier? There's a recessive one. It's a heterozygous condition. So the heterozygous one, in this case, is a carrier. Okay, she does suffer from hemophilia, but she carries it. Once she carries it, there's a chance that she can pass it to her offspring. All right. When we come to male, it's now X and Y. The moment is this, it's normal because of the dominant one. However, when we come to the hemophilic male, if unfortunate, this is carried on the non-homologous portion, and then the boy becomes hemophilic. All right. So I just wanted us to be familiar. Please put this table in your books. Put it in your books and keep it. As I said on the very first lesson of genetics and inheritance, we do not cram. It's just simple. You see, the way we are doing it, we should go in attacking whether the way it's set up, either from the bottom going up, because we understand all the terms that they use, whether it's normal, it's carrier, it's not known, suggest the possible genotype, suggest the possible phenotypes. We can answer it there in front of us. Okay, very important. Now let's go back to that example now, because now that you are familiar with our possible genotypes and phenotypes. You see, because this is conventionally accepted in our syllabus, as long as it's a hemophilic order question that we found, it most likely be denoted as H and H for the hemophilia gene in the dominant and the recessive one. So I can give you a multiple choice question and ask you, what is the phenotype of this individual? A, carrier male, B, carrier female, C, hemophilic male. Without having to tell you that X represents what, or H. Are you getting me? By just doing so, you should be able to comfortably answer such a question. Good. Now, let's do the cross. Carrier hemophilic male marries a normal female, sorry, marries a normal male. Carrier hemophilic. Next, what happens? We show gametes, grade 12. We show gametes. H from here, H recessive from here. That's our possible gametes. We come to the normal male, the X gamete. So this male was unfortunate because on the X portion, on that non-homologous portion, it was occupied by a dominant gene for blood. Factor 8. Good. We got this in for one, we got that gamete. Next, grade 12, we show fertilization, random fertilization by these arrows, or by the, don't want to throw away your Punnett square, we use it when you're doing our diabetic crosses. Possible outcomes. Where is my green one? My trademark. X and X. What do we get? XX. Okay. This one and that one. We get a male. We come to this one and this one. We get that one, this one, that one. We get that one. Let's look at our outcomes. And we should be able to understand these phenotypes. All right. F1 genotype. The question can say, what would be the possible phenotypes of the children? And you can say 5. So phenotype 1, this one, possibility of this one, and this one. Let's define them. That's their phenotype. Here is capital letter H and H on XX, so it's a normal female. Grade 12, what is this one? XY. The big H, it's a normal male. Normal male, normal female, and normal male. H and H on our XX, on our lady, on a girl, which means she's carrying the recessive allele, 8, which means she's a carrier female. As I said, you will never have carrier males in hemophilic. It's either you are normal or you are hemophilic. Okay. In this case, it's XY with the smaller one, which means it's hemophilic male. This male writing of mine is at the back. Okay, that's a simple. We have answered our question. A simple question. Are we following? Great. Hopefully so. Let's move on to the next item. Should I give you an example to do? I think so. We'll work one together. I'll give you time to do one for yourself. Good. Let's look at that example. In African bee, honeybee, or the one that makes honey, is eye color is sex-linked trait. And we are assuming the honeybee follows the same format as humans, as XX for the female one and XY. So the clever grade 12s of mine, when they read the question for the first time, they get the meaning. But to understand on the second time, like what I said, you read the question twice or even 3 times. For the first one, just go through it. Okay. In African bee, honeybee, eye color is a sex-linked trait. Okay. The allele for red eyes are, and my symbols are given. Well done for me. Red eyes are dominant over 4. Okay. Linked trait, red eyes dominant for white. Noted are done. Next part of the question find out the phenotypes of the offspring when part A, a homozygous red-eyed female is crossed with a white male. Wonderful. I'll start by answering my question. Where do I start? I can start with denoting the parents because already my okay. Sorry for that. Forgive me. We'll do this example tomorrow. I didn't see. Since I said we are covering both, where is this? I said we are covering both red, green color blindness and hemophilia. And then the same applies to red color blindness. The same applies, but I said we are making an example on hemo. Then before we do a red, green color blindness. So let's look at an example of hemophilia. Okay, let's just change there. Let's change this question. Let's say a hemophilic male, female marries a normal, because it can be hemophilia can be both. Sorry, let me not confuse you. Let's just say a carrier hemophilic female marries, instead of normal here, she marries a hemophilic. She marries a hemophilic male. She marries a hemophilic male. Okay. She marries a hemophilic male. So we are changing this to be what? Okay, so let's do it properly. Let's start. Our parents, phenotype is carrier, female, and hemophilic male. Sorry for the shortcut, just in the instead of time, Mary's genotype. Obvious X, and then let me use this. That's my carrier female. She marries a hemophilic male. All right, that's the change. The question now says, what are the possible genotypes? I can give you any other question. I can say, is there a possibility of getting, I can put that question. Is there a possibility of getting a hemophilic girl? Or is there a possibility of getting, what's the possibility of getting a hemophilic male in their offspring? I can throw up any question that is possible on the outcomes. Then you have to prove to me by doing a cross. Right. We do meiosis. Okay. My H. Comes here. All right. With the carrier. But next, I show fertilization, and I'll just do fet. For the interest of time, I like for crossing my red. And this would give us X and X. The X is H and H. Perfect. I come on to this one, and this one, they give me X. Sorry. Since it's XY, let me just use a different color. I get X and Y. But I'll be consistent on the nature of what they are carrying. It's still a big. Next, this one and this one. They will give me, oh, they are girls. I put girls in black here. X and X. What are they carrying? The big H and the smaller H. Perfect. The last option is this one and this one. They give me XY. XY, I've put it in blue. And what is the nature of the hemophilic variation? It's H. Okay, grade 12. Give me, so this is the F1 genotype. All right. Now I need to determine the F1 phenotype. Okay. What is it? It's carrier female. All right. This one is normal. Tell me, grade 12. It's a normal male. This one is a carrier female. Yeah. Carrier female. The last one is a hemophilic male. All right. So those are the possible outcomes for hemophilia. Go look around for questions that deals with problems. And as I've said, since they are all okay. Tomorrow we'll come straight to look at an example of color blindness. Color blindness is also sex linked. So copy this question and attempt part A. We'll attempt part 2 together tomorrow. Then we would start on, it's just a continuation. We look at 2. All our problems have been looking at one gene with 2 traits. Until 2 days ago, one gene more than 2 traits, which we said multiple alleles. Now, when we come to dihybrid, we say di means 2. We are looking at the inheritance of 2 genes. So we are going back to typical examples of Mendelian fashion of inheritance. So after we look at another example of a sex-linked, which red-green, it's about how your eyes distinguishes color. So after we finish this, we introduce ourselves to dihybrid inheritance. You find out in the layout of your page setter, it would require us to finish monohybrid, dominance types, complete, incomplete, then we do dihybrid before we come on to sex-linked. But I chose to come to sex-linked, then we can go back to dihybrid. And then I would want you to distinguish that we are now looking at now 2 genes. The 2 genes each has its 2 variation. 1 gene, 2 variation. 1 gene, 2 variation. So it's times 2 what we've been doing. We're saying 1 gene, 2 variation. Now tomorrow in di, which means we're looking at 2. That's where the di comes from. How 2 genes, showing how 2 genes can be passed from parents to offspring. Thank you very much. Please attempt the question on red, green color blindness, following the instructions that I have given you on the inheritance of traits that are carried on the sex chromosome, because this one is carried on the sex chromosome. Thank you very much. We meet tomorrow at 12 to 1.